Pop star M.I.A. went on Tim Pool's podcast and opened up about the reasons she got baptized, some of the backlash she's been facing, and so much more. Let's jump into this clip. If you guys aren't familiar with who M.I.A. is, she had some massive records and recently came out as a Christian. She is from India and has a very fascinating testimony about what's going on in the music industry. Now, as always, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to these celebrities that are coming to faith, this is not me endorsing everything they believe or everything they've ever said or everything they've ever tweeted, okay? Or even everything they've ever done as a Christian. This is just me being intrigued by the fact that so many people seem to be coming to faith, and not just quiet faith. There used to be a time when people come to faith and they were just quiet about it. Overt, bold, unapologetic faith in Jesus. All right, so let's jump into this conversation.
You recently became Christian?
I became Christian, yeah. I got baptized.
When was that?
I got baptized in 2022, but I became a Christian in, I guess, 2017.
What
I
sparked
didn't know
that?
she was a Christian for so long. So it seems like maybe it was a longer process for her. Let's see what she says.
That awakening.
My real name is Madangi, right? And it's the goddess of music and spoken word.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, in Hinduism, which I didn't know. So I grew up an atheist. Even when I came out as M.I.A., I was an atheist. And my dad always said religion is used as is a tool for social control. And he was raised Catholic, though. And so then I guess after I made the M.I.A. album is when I found out what my name meant, after I got cancelled for saying connected to Google, connected to the government.
Really interesting. She said, my dad grew up Catholic. Now, India is known for, in Sri Lanka, Hinduism. What's interesting is that most people don't know is that there's a deep, rich Christian history in India because church history would have us believe that the Apostle Thomas, the one who said, you know, I'll believe when I could touch your wounds, and Jesus was like, all right, here. I believe the first one to declare Jesus as God in the Gospel of John, my Lord and my God, goes to India and plants churches. So India has a very, very, very deep, rich Christian history going all the way back to the Apostle Thomas. So it's interesting to hear her say that her dad was in the minority religion faith in India.
That was the opening of the record. And then obviously WikiLeaks and everything came out in 2010, 2011, around that time. But this record came out just before it. And so then, you know, it just kind of, it was about technology because the iPhone came out, and it was, the reason why that happened is because of my observation to do with the Tamil genocide, like what had kind of happened during 2009. And I didn't really think too much about the wider scope of how things were going to be in the world. Then everyone cancelled me. And when I was cancelled, I went to India for a bit. And then that's when I discovered what my name meant. And it was kind of a cool thing because in Hinduism, you had a concept of a goddess who was the goddess of music and also the goddess of the untouchables. So it's about giving voice to the voiceless. And she was a goddess of spoken word, which was kind of like rapping. So when the record labels were like, why are you political? Because you'd be better making pop records. I brought back this story and I said, look, 5,000 years ago, they'd already written a concept where it was possible to be a musician and stick up for people and talk about pollution of information and you know, fight for something. Like it's okay to have these things kind of cross over. And so it was very useful having this Hindu understanding. So I became a Hindu. And so then I went down the path of Hinduism and studied it and tried to understand it a lot. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, 5 years into it, I had a vision of Jesus. Yeah, while I was awake.
Wow. So she goes back to her roots as an Indian woman in India, studies her name, discovers this. And by the way, props to her for telling this story and not just like, yeah, I got baptized, I'm a Christian. Like she really gives you her testimony on Tim Pool, which is not a Christian or a Christian podcast or anything like that. So that's very, 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 very awesome that she really walked them through that. And it was through her reconnection of her ethnic identity that she actually becomes into it and then has an encounter with Jesus.
Which is also, interestingly enough, the same story that we hear about a lot of Muslims overseas, is that they're coming to Jesus, lots of them, like in droves, because of visions of Jesus that they're having, or dreams of Jesus that they're having. So it's interesting she got that same sort of treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So I just made the Borders video, and
Great video.
yeah, so that was the last thing I did as a Hindu, and it was about humanity. And I thought that creatively, because Matangi is the goddess of like creativity as well. So I really felt that I had to make this to understand. And you know, the whole time I had the strength to make this video on my own. So I directed it, and we kind of did the whole thing in 20 days.
Wow.
Again, there was a storm. I was going on holiday, and there was a storm where I was going. So I landed in Chennai, and then we were stuck there because of the storm. And we thought, okay, let's just make a video. And we started and finished it from scratch within 20 days, you know. And that I thought was like divine.
It's a huge production.
It's huge.
There's
We
a
had
lot
like
of people in that video.
1,000 people, and we had a crew of 200. It was
You
massive.
said 50,000 people?
1,000 people.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow,
And a
that's
crew of 200. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So to do that very quickly, it's like you had to believe in something to get through, and what the message was. And you know, so I was feeling very comfortable in Hinduism. But the funny thing we did during this video is we kept going to like markets in India and buying really badly spelled shirts, and we were going to put it in the video as a joke. Because Indians always make these motivational shirts, but they spell it all wrong. You know, so one of the ones en route to this day, like this specific day, I think this was like day 2 or 3. So they were like, you know, we don't have the ramps that we're going to shoot the speedboat into the air, but we can make you a ramp where you could stand in the water. And I was like, okay. But that day we found a t-shirt that said Jesus sad instead of Jesus said, I am the way.
That's hilarious.
Amazing.
We thought it was funny, and I put on this Jesus sad t-shirt. And so it was kind of weird that we had this shot, and but I didn't really think about it. And then straight after I made this video, something else happened in the Hindu realm. And then I had a vision of Jesus, because I don't know why, but it happened. And Matangi, or Mardangi, the goddess, it was always about freedom of speech. And to protect freedom of speech, and speech is super important. And it's the articulation of inner thought into external sound. And she resides in the throat, in between your brain sending the signal and being turned into words. And so it was always about truth, you know. And so when I was cancelled, and in between those 2 albums, I was cancelled like 50 other times for all different other reasons. Super Bowl, you know, there's the stuff about when I said Obama should give back his Nobel Peace Prize. Like there was many things. And then Julian Assange, like, you know, meeting him. And then
they thought she was a problem and unhinged for the stuff she was saying.
Really?
Yeah, she did not care. She did not care. Yeah.
I made the WikiLeaks album, and it was all like a million other things. But then I thought, you know, truth is an important thing. And when I had the vision of Jesus, it's not like I could lie about it or pretend I didn't have it. You know, I still have to be truthful, because even in the context of the thing I'd followed before, which was Mardangi, the concept of this deity, it stood for truth. And it was part of my journey and exploration to find out what that meant. And once you take truth serious, then you get revealed this other truth.
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, what if this
I rock with that, because I would say that in my journey, I was definitely... Well, once you're convinced that there can be an absolute truth, because there's people that hold a very postmodernistic view of the world and don't even believe that. But once you believe that there can be an objective truth, a measurable truth, an absolute truth, and then you pursue that, it's very difficult to not arrive at Jesus.
Eesh.
It's very difficult. You have to really contort and twist and manipulate yourself to not arrive at, like, Jesus is the ultimate truth, where all truth springs from. Even truth that's not directly connected to Jesus still is gathering, is the downstream effects of it, you know? Go ahead.
always supposed to be up to this point, you know, and maybe there's something else that's going to come after. I don't know, you know, but at this point, that is a truth and can't lie about it. And so then I was like, why did that happen? I was quite comfortable in Hinduism. And then I guess when 2020 came along, it sort of made more sense.
Right.
You know, it really did feel like things were changing. And even though the Borders song was all of those things where I was saying, we do need a reset. I said it.
Right.
No other artist said that.
So this is Peter. He's speaking in Pentecost, and he's basically connecting them to the prophecy of Joel. Then Peter stood forward with the 11 and other apostles and shouted to the crowd, "Listen carefully, all of you fellow Jews and residents of Jerusalem. Make no mistake. These people were not drunk." Because they were speaking in tongues, people thought they were drunk. They weren't drunk, which, by the way, those of you guys that don't think you can get drunk based on biblical wine, I want for you. Clearly,
He had to.
these folks could get drunk.
Yeah.
Clearly, Jews can get drunk.
Yep.
So the people are like, well, it was just grape juice. No, it wasn't. Because if it was just grape juice, we wouldn't have Peter saying, oh, by the way,
They're not drunk.
these folks are not drunk. Why are they not drunk? Oh, because it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. Right? Too early for that. Now, what would you see predicted? What you see was predicted long ago by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit upon all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams. In those days, I will pour out my spirit, even on my servant, men and women alike, and they will prophesy. So this is what Joel was prophesying about the last days. This is clearly something that's been happening since Acts through today. How does God say this is going to happen from Joel, but then it only happens for the first 50 years of the church, and then God stops it? Did we miss the last days? Did Jesus come back already? Like, that's an incoherent position,
Yeah.
right? So in the last days, verse 18, I will pour out my spirit even on my servants, men and women alike, and they will prophesy, and I will cause wonders in heaven, in the heavens above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and clouds, smoke. The sun will become dark. So now he's getting into literal end days stuff that we see echoed in what happens in Revelation, right? And then verse 21, but everyone who calls on the name of the Lord, keep going, will be saved. People of Israel, listen, God publicly endorsed Jesus the Nazarene by doing powerful miracles, wonders, and signs through him, as you well know. I think that it is well within a reasonable eschatology, a reasonable view of the gifts that you can, people can have dreams, have visions, have prophecies, so on and so forth. If you don't think that, I highly recommend you go and watch debates on this. Like, check out Justin Peters versus Dr. Michael Brown, right? Like in Sandstorms. Like, that is an unequivocal. You can check out Dr. Michael Brown versus the guy who was with Justin Peters. They had a debate just about this. So if you haven't watched these things, I highly, 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 highly recommend you watch these things and sit with those debates. That's a sidebar to the broader conversation.
You throw all these things into the air, like, what does values mean? What does your family mean? What does your belief mean? What
Politics.
does your politics mean? Or the borders, or everything, you know, as large topics and issues. What do they all mean once you begin to tear at the fabric of society where meanings are given to things, and you know, and we override that, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And so, of course, all of those things are going to start breaking, you know, if you remove the foundation.
Yep.
And
So she's talking about worldview apologetics. She's connecting this to a macro worldview issue and not just a micro, who is Jesus, not Jesus. Like, this is also reflective of a worldview issue that then leads you to who is Jesus.
so I was already there in 2016 asking these questions because, yes, I saw the change, you know, and I guess it was written before Trump came into power. I after you ask those questions, you're just kind of like, well, what do you do now?
Yeah.
You know, and then I had the vision, and I don't know why, and I don't understand what was the reason for it. And then when 2020 happened, I see it on like a bigger level to be like, okay, this is, you know, certain things happen because they have to happen. And I guess we're still living through that time.
I had a very similar experience where I was an atheist. Christ offered me the only structure and joy to chaos that this world gives you, and it was happening up into lockdowns. As you're also noticing, like you're talking about technology and like this totalitarian techno world we're in, they're trying to become God and they're trying to be omniscient. You know?
Yes.
Whereas like there's an ancient omniscience that I was now believing in because it's the only way to push back against this fake omniscience in the world.
Exactly.
You also recently got baptized.
Very common about folks who struggle with the breakdowns in the institutions, specifically around government. And this is the door that they kind of started exploring Jesus through. You know?
Because it's like, what else are they hiding from me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Last summer, yeah.
Last summer.
Yep.
A lot of people.
We're in a revival, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of people come into this studio who are, oh, yeah, you know, I found Christ and things like that, or more specifically that.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense. It gives you peace now because I don't know where else to find it. I mean, even Hinduism,
I got to say that the hood or the head covering thing is kind of hard. It's kind of sick.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's refreshing to see people come to faith and not lose their
Culture.
is culture the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think like demanding that Kat Von D stops wearing black is like one of the most corniest things that Christians do. So like
So it'd be like
her coming to faith.
that's a Hindu connection. You need
Yeah,
to, or whatever. I mean, I'm just making stuff up, but you would assume, maybe a Western evangelical Christian would say something like that because they're not familiar with it.
Because we equate becoming a Christian with cultural assimilation, and evangelical subculture is not the same as being a Christian.
You need to wear beige and mom jeans.
Not the same, right? Not the same. So like whether it's her and the hood and the aesthetic, or Kat Von D with the black on black on black with the bright red lipstick, like whatever that thing is, like you don't have to then fit into the mold.
Therapy doesn't have the answer. Science doesn't really have the answer. And you know, science is a study to me, but it's not the answer, you know. And
That's a good point.
I was very, very, very judgmental. My mum was a Christian for a long, is, and I was very judgmental and always felt like, you know, I'm an intellectual and I look down at Christians as something as it, you know, like naive people followed because they had nothing else, you know. But I don't think that anymore.
Well, I thought it was cool. She had a vision. It's getting some people in the chat really hung up on it.
Are they still talking about the vision, please?
Someone's like, dude, did she bring back to salvation anything other than like just visions? She talking about salvation? All she's saying is, I had a vision, and it literally took me out of a religion I was comfortable with.
A false religion?
It took me out of a false religion and brought me to Jesus. Like, explain to me where the heresy is. Like, explain.
There is no explanation.
So
I'm telling you, it's an incoherent worldview.
There's not. So someone is not sharing the gospel with her. She's not going to church. She's not Jesus curious. And the next day, she loves Jesus because
and gets baptized. And gets baptized years later, not
baptized
instantly. Years later. So there probably was some wrestling there.
Tell me where the biblical inconsistency is. It wasn't a micro instruction that this person was saying the vision is. Like, she didn't get something counter to the gospel. She didn't even say that Jesus came to her in a vision. She said she had a vision of Jesus and was like, oh, I guess I'm Christian now. Like she got verified, and she didn't say the words Jesus may or may not have said, or what the angels may have. She didn't get into detail. She didn't say anything heretical. She literally just said a vision brought me out of this one thing into another, or a dream. And I don't get how that is so insanely like hard to believe to anybody. Like, you believe there's a God? You believe
bro, it's, you know what it is?
You believe there's a God.
And
you don't think you can have a dream?
It's the death purity spiral. If you're not in my team,
she's still Hindu.
If you're not on my team and you don't believe what I believe about the gifts of the Spirit, and you're not a cessationist, and you don't worship John MacArthur and these guys, if you don't rock with these guys as your authority, then you can't even be good. God can't even speak to you in a vision because micro revelations are bad. Though you pray for one if you needed one. Like we all do. All right, let me know what you think about that in the comments section. And it would be remiss of me to not tell you about our biggest sale of the year, our Father's Day sale happening right now. You can get our brand new Bless God Prayer Journal at the cheapest price it's ever been, as well as some pretty fire priest, provider, protector launch that's perfect for the husband, the father, or the mentor in your life. So go to blessgod.shop and pick up something right now. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.